So what have you been up to lately, buddy?
Not a whole lot, man. I went 12 years in the IT field without having to get a certificate, and I finally had to get one. That was a pain in the ass.
What's your
Uh,
certificate for?
a Security Plus. It wasn't hard to study for. It was just it's stressful because you pay like $400 to take it, and so you never know what kind of questions are going to be on it. Ended up being pretty easy though. Other than that, nothing really. How
Okay.
about you? What's the motivation to get into this politics thing? Did you just notice that it was, I mean, not into politics itself, but to go this route with the stream, did you notice it was gaining a lot of uh, traction and you enjoyed it more than gaming?
No, I mean I've been doing politics for probably like the past 3 years, like pretty heavily.
I guess I just didn't notice.
Yeah.
My interest, though, in you and Jordan Peterson comes from this. Ready? I'm going to say some triggering things to you, but
Uh-oh.
take my word for it. I'm not a rube. I'm not coming here to get a rise out of you. I've gone pretty liberal in my politics over the years, um, from a pretty heavy conservative point. And then I just started listening to Joe Rogan, right? That's the first warning sign about what I'm about to say. And I listened to the Peterson things, and I've been seeing him in the news and whatnot. And I started listening a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm listening to him, it's hard for me to disagree with a lot of the stuff I hear. And then I'll see some people say some comments about him being, sexist, regressive, etc. And I'm like, I don't see that, or I don't hear that. And what the interactions I've seen all his appearances on Rogan, his GQ articles, and as he's explaining himself, he's not saying anything racist, he's not saying anything sexist, regressive, etc. But his discussion about speech and other thoughts, they seem to make sense. And so, my interest with you is, as someone that seems to have put a lot of thought into the counters to his politics or his beliefs, is to kind of maybe give me the other side in a non-screechy Peterson's oppressive kind of way.
Sure. Do you know? Okay, so we can begin with two basic words, and we can kind of go from there. You've got descriptive claims and you've got normative claims, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, a descriptive claim is a statement, a matter of fact about the world. So, this bag is blue. The book is 12 pages long. These are descriptive claims, right? Then we got something called normative claims. These are claims of what we ought to do in society. You should be nice to somebody. You shouldn't murder someone. You should take care of the sick, etc. Right?
Got it.
The problem with what Jordan Peterson does is Jordan Peterson makes a lot of descriptive claims, but he never makes any normative claims. So Jordan Peterson will say things like, women are not as happy today as they used to be. Women and men don't get along in the office. Men tend to be better at this thing. And then that's all he ever says. He never takes a step further to make a prescriptive claim to say, like, what should we do about something? And the problem is a lot of people will take the things that he says and then they like jump to very bad places. Kind of obviously, it's where you would expect someone to go based on what he said. But then he never takes responsibility for any of the kind of normative leaps people make off of his descriptive ones. And that's kind of the annoying thing with dealing with Jordan Peterson. Technically, Jordan Peterson himself doesn't usually say things well. When he's talking about psychology, it's usually okay. When he starts talking about like history or politics, it's usually really fucking stupid. But generally, when he's talking about psychology, his stuff is okay. But a lot of people use kind of what he's saying to empower some really, in my opinion, some bad philosophy or bad ethic or moral thought, I guess.
Okay, so to backtrack a second, so
Mm-hmm. Oh, if
make
I
sure
ever
I
say
have
anything you
the right
disagree,
order.
just stop me immediately. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So normative is the claim of
You can think of normative
normative.
like moral claims.
Got it. So when you're saying that was the example of saying women used to be X, Y, and Z. Is that that's the normative one?
No,
Okay.
no, that's a descriptive.
Okay, that's
Women were
descriptive.
happy at one point in time. That's a descriptive claim.
Okay.
Now, but if
So
you were to say,
descriptive.
therefore, women shouldn't work today, that would be the normative claim.
Okay. Got it. So then your issue is that he makes a lot of descriptive claims, and then those get taken out of context or get taken to drive other things by other people.
Yeah, so basically, like descriptive claims mean nothing without normative claims. Like humans just don't function that way. We don't do anything with facts, or rather, we have to make decisions about what we do with facts, and that's generally where the interesting conversation is. Like, what should we do? What ought we to do, given some set of facts or whatever? And Peterson never seems to go forward in making those statements. He just kind of like lays out a bunch of descriptive claims and then let other people decide. But the problem is his descriptive claims pretty obviously lead in like a single direction. So like it seems like he pushes for like conservative family, roles, conservative gender roles in society. That seems to be the point that he always pushes towards. He never explicitly says that, though, and then when you call him out on it, he always reminds you that, well, hold on, I didn't say that, we should go back to traditional gender roles, but he always like lays out descriptive claims that usually pretty obviously lead you there.
So there's a book called Leaning In, and it's about I can't remember. Give me one second, I'm gonna look it up real quick. It is written by Sheryl Sandberg, and it's a book about women in the workplace, the kind of issues that they face, what contributes to them, etc. And I'm sure you've heard Peterson talk about. Have you watched his appearances on the Joe Rogan at all?
I've seen some of them. Yeah, he's been like two or three times, hasn't he? Right at this point.
Yeah, by himself, and then I think once or twice with Brett Weinstein.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I haven't watched a lot of his talks, but one of the ones that kind of reminded me of this book, because this book talks about just different aspects of women in the workplace and how the issues they face and why some perform X way while others perform Y.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard Peterson talk, there was the guy you debated, the like hour and a half long video about, and the title says something about cancer in it.
Yeah, sure, okay.
And the guy keeps talking about something about lawyers, and I think he was trying to allude to this
6
discussion.
months. Amazing.
But Jordan makes the comment that law firms are struggling to have high level female partners,
performers or whatever. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so the issue, he says, is that it's not a matter of these people not being able to perform at that level, not being able to take the stress and whatnot. It's that they are working these high-powered jobs, they're working a very long time, and they have basically what he says, because I don't think he uses this exact wording, is they have another option. They can continue to work that, or they can bump back, work only X number of hours, and also, start a family and have a life outside of it. But to them, they have that option to them.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, logically, it makes sense. And then when you hear people talk about, describing the little wage gap there is, and what contributes to that wage gap aside from the systemic issues that, whatever, it all seems to make sense. Like, that sounds right. So what kind of claim, like?
Wait, so which sounds right? That women should go start
No,
a family
not that
instead of...
not should. It's that they do, and that's why law firms find themselves in that position where they're struggling. They want to have these, women in higher positions. They value it, etc. But they're having trouble. To me, doesn't sound like he's making any kind of absurd sexist claim or saying they should. All he's saying is this is a matter of fact situation.
Yeah, the problem is that like a lot of people kind of like jump off these talking points to say things like, oh, well, look, like women aren't as driven as men. Women just want to go home and have kids or whatever. And therefore, like, we shouldn't encourage women to pursue these kinds of like tech-oriented jobs or these like harder jobs because like these are better suited for men because women just want to go have families or whatever. It's like where a lot of people kind of like jump to.
Right, which is wrong. Like he said, nothing of the sort, and for them to jump to that conclusion is
but the problem is that this is the great trick that Peterson pulls. It makes him very frustrating to watch other people try to talk with him. That this is why people get so frustrated when they talk to them. It's because Peterson will never make. You fucking idiot! Are you serious? Get out of here. Peterson will never make any prescriptive claims ever. He'll always retreat to this kind of like, oh, well, I don't know what we should do. Like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. He always plays this game where he'll never make like that prescriptive claim. And that's why. And so like anytime you try to attribute any prescriptive claim towards him, he just, retreats to that. Oh, I don't know. And it's like, okay, well.
I get what you're saying. So what are I think one of the strongest things that I find myself agreeing with him is when he talks about language. And I know I don't want to specifically get on the trans bill that he was talking about.
Sure, we can get on the trans bill, sure.
But there are comments. I hate fucking compilation videos because it never shows you the whole picture, right? But I watched one today, and there was someone talking to him about why. Oh man, I wish I could. I didn't come prepared. I thought we'd discuss doing this, and then I'm not
gonna like fucking roast the fuck out of you over anything. It's okay. Yeah, no, it's just a conversation. No, but I mean, I've seen a lot of these videos, so I probably will even know what you're talking about. But
it was something along the lines of like he talks about the way language is controlled. So he talks about the radical people who are, you know, he says the language is a product of these radical individuals.
Yeah, unfortunately, he has this very weird. So this is kind of where like Peterson goes off the rails. I think when Peterson is talking about psychology, as much as it pains me to say this, I think there's actually some value there. He does make like decent statements about psychology, and usually when he's talking within that very narrow purview of psychology, his comments are generally correct and generally intelligent. When he starts talking about politics or philosophy, it gets very fucking cringy. So he's bought into this thing, and I'm sure you've heard this phrase of like cultural Marxism or whatever, or postmodern cultural neo-post-Marxist. He'll use some combination of these words. Yeah, it's basically this idea that like people are trying to destroy science or knowledge or information because there's some marching orders coming from some post-Marxist doctrine conspiracy shit about like I don't know, like that when he starts getting into that stuff, we're getting into like very weird conspiracy territory where it's much easier to describe things using more simple explanations, like, oh, like a lot of people are progressive and push for, you know, inclusions of certain types of people. Did that make sense?
No, that makes absolute sense. Now the way you worded it just now, I've never heard a wording like that. Where I've never heard him say anything about like a marching order coming from. And
he calls it like I think he says like Marxist postmodern Marxists or something. Is like.
Oh yeah, no, he says that all the time. It's just like the more he hasn't said anything that I've heard. Nice shot. He hasn't said anything about it being like a collective. To me, from what I've heard, it doesn't sound like he's saying it's a collective where everyone's working together and colluding to make this happen, but more just this is an ideology that's starting in academia and it's working its way out, permeating through society, and so that in that. From my end, like the Marxism, not necessarily, but when he talks about the way speech is controlled and he talks about these radical social progressives, it's like hard for me to not be like, I kind of see that. Like when you see people's lives getting ruined because they said X, Y, and Z, where there's the mob mentality to go after someone because they have committed what is perceived to be some slight against a protected class.
Yeah, but have you, I mean, like, very simple. You've heard, like, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? I'm sure you've heard this expression before, right? Like, there are people that go real hard on social media and shit that probably shouldn't. I totally agree with that. And I think we can all agree,
Let's see if Robot Lady can
I think
rap.
a lot of us can agree that that's
sweaty.
bad.
Unicorn weak.
But the idea that, like, we should throw out, like,
Arms
everything related to, like, protected classes
already.
and everything
Mom's spaghetti Nathan
is
Pepe.
probably not, like, a good idea.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
And I think that my attraction to listen when I listen to Peterson is that I feel that when it comes to discussing those issues, I think there's a very big concern. Like, you know what the spiral of silence is?
Yeah, something what you're talking about is called the chilling effect, kind of, right? Is where, like, if you make it so that somebody can't say something, nobody's going to want to say anything at all, or whatever.
Yeah, fear of being ostracized.
Sure, yeah.
People aren't going to. Like, I think that's something that really that concerns me.
So here's what needs to be demonstrated. So here's the problem. In the United States, at least, in most I'm not going to say this. In the United States and Canada, what we've decided is that there are certain protections that are worth endowing on certain groups of people. So, for instance, if you are somebody that owns, like, a business, you're not allowed to call, like, if you've got, like, a gay employee, you can't, like, use racial slurs, or you can't use, like, homophobic slurs, like, against these types of people, right? That for gay employees, for black employees, for whatever, right? There are certain classes of people that we protect in certain ways. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, and people have also said, hey, we should extend this protection to transgender people as well. And that's totally fine. For Peterson to start crying about things like, oh, protected speech and compelled speech, like, okay, well, is it compelled speech that I'm not allowed to call, like, a homosexual employee, like, a fag or whatever? Is this something that, like, does that count as compelled speech that you're telling me to refer? Like, and these are kinds of, like, the arguments that Peterson hasn't made. You know, he'll always just say something like, oh, like, this is, like, a protected, or I don't even, I have a really hard time understanding, like, how somebody can get so triggered or so upset over the fact that, like, we want to extend protections to, like, certain transgender people or other classes for being protected at the workplace or whatever.
So give me 1 second, because what you just said reminded me of, I thought he had a good response to someone making that same point. And I have the video right here.
Yeah, go for it.
1 second.
Yeah, we can listen to the video too if you want to like me.
Okay. Look that up now so I can link it because I have it on my phone. I hate the fucking title of this video. Like, I feel that here's my personal stance as I've become more and more progressive in a lot of things, and as I've given up a lot of my older conservative ideas, and I've become more open to discussing and hearing out other ideas, is that I think conversations are the biggest thing, and it's what we don't have, because there's so much of this gotcha on both sides, owning the libs, fucking schooling the Republicans, whatever. I don't like that. I think it's really bad, and I think that is one of the worst things happening right now, and that's gonna, if any problem comes from everything happening, it's gonna be our unwillingness to talk to each other without freaking the fuck out on each other.
Sure.
And I think that's where my interpretation of a lot of what the stuff he has said is aimed at that.
Well, yeah, and again, this is these are things where I can agree, yeah, cool, we should be able to have better conversations without freaking out, etc., trying to witch hunt people's career into the ground or whatever. But that doesn't mean we have to throw out every single thing related to protections of transgender people. Right? All these things have to be thrown out because you've also coupled them in with the other thing, right?
Yeah. I agree. All right, I'm gonna get the chat.
I'm coming for you next, buddy. Fuck, there needs to be mics in this goddamn game.
Oh, you can't do, I was gonna say. You got me excited for a second.
Oh no, I fucked up. I thought I had my knife on. Or I thought I had a knife on. I was way too far. Okay, go. What would you link me?
I sent it to you, DM.
All right, I'm coming.
You like this better than PUBG?
Yeah, the PUBG is really annoying. Okay, I'm gonna start playing it. Ready? Let me go.
Yep.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
Why do you feel that someone's personal gender identity and pronouns infringes your free speech? Can one not also argue, based on your interpretation, that professors can use racial slurs in their classroom and that the inability to do so would violate their freedom of speech?
There's a difference between saying that there's something you can't say and saying that there are things that you have to say. And I regard these made-up pronouns, all of them, as the neologisms of radical PC authoritarians. Do you understand that? And I'm not a fan of that sort of person. And the reason I'm not a fan of that sort of person is because I've done my homework. I've read everything I can get my hands on in the development of authoritarian political systems, and I know the literature inside out and backwards. And I am not going to be a mouthpiece for language that I detest.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause for a second.
Yeah, that's pretty much the end of that one.
Yeah,
that's the one I was...
So there's kind of a lot of baggage that has to be worked through here. Oh man. It's hard because I have to we have to go pretty hard here. I don't know how educated or uneducated Peterson is in regards to any of these topics from a philosophical point of view. So how we identify as he or she, these things are personal things, and these things are socially constructed things, okay? The idea that we have categories for male, even insofar as biology is concerned, the idea that we have categories for male, the idea that we have categories for female, these are value statements that we've made as humans. We've chosen to group some values together, we've chosen to identify some things in some manner, et cetera, right? When it comes to how we present ourselves publicly in terms of male or female, we can say a gender, right? From a gender point of view, these things are socially constructed categories as well. For evidence of this, as much as people might want to scream at you about how, they've got their facts for genders and sex, you don't know the actual sex of 99% of the people you ever meet. You don't actually know if they have a dick or a vagina. You don't know if they've got real boobs, if it's gynecomastia. You just don't know. You can't without starting to do genetic testing or groping people. You just can't know these things. We typically address people in the manner in which they present themselves, that line up with our social expectations of how these categories work. That's just how it goes. For really good examples of this, even when Ben Shapiro is trying to intentionally misgender people like Bruce Jenner, he constantly accidentally refers to her as a her, and he has to correct himself to refer to her as a he when he wants to misgender her. He does this repeatedly. Which kind of goes to show you that we even by default we kind of address people by the pronouns that they present themselves as. The idea that somebody can't just say I'd want to be addressed as a he or a she, and there's some problem with that, it's just mystifying to me. We largely do this out of a means to be it's just.
So to get...
It's a person's name. It would be like me going up to Shapiro and being I'm not going to call you Ben. I'm going to call you Benjamin because that's the scientifically correct way to refer to you. I will not refer to you as Ben or Benny. Benjamin is the like, it just doesn't make any sense to like go so hard on something like that. Much the same way that if somebody wants to be referred to as she or he or whatever, it's okay, that's fine. It's just a pronoun. You're not like changing the world or engaging in some scientific revisionism or neo-post-doctorate Marxist modernism, whatever shit to do that either, you know?
I completely agree. So I do want to say two
go
things.
for
First, from my side, I have no problem. Like there was a couple years ago, I really don't like Chelsea Manning, and I refused to call her just out of what I felt was like, you know, a fuck you that really means nothing. Was I'm not going to call her Chelsea, and I'm going to call her a he. I've since changed on that. I don't care.
Okay.
Like I still think she's a piece of shit, but I say she. See?
Sure, yeah.
And so something I've never heard is what my interpretation of a lot of this shit has always been is that he isn't against calling a transgendered woman she. It's the Z's or Zim shit that he had an issue with. But
yeah,
maybe I'm
and
wrong,
I mean, like,
and I've not.
I've heard him talk about like the 52 pronouns. Honest to God, I can be more sympathetic towards those arguments because for a variety of reasons. But like, do people actually ask for this? Like, how many people actually push for like the Z's or
There's some
shit? Like
non-ironic Twitter profiles that put it in there.
Okay, so but like, aside from like some crazies like on Twitter, this doesn't seem to be a thing that a lot of people are actually
calling
talking
him
about.
Ben Shapiro. He wasn't even born Ben. He was born Benjamin. I refuse.
Damn, get that loot.
To indulge the
Bitches.
delusion he continues to operate under that he should call himself anything other than his birth name, even if he were to legally be change it his name.
There's some fucker in here.
I wish you could just shoot through that. And get,
I'm gonna die. Okay, I'm sorry. Keep going.
no, you're fine.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I agree. Like the Zer and the Zim and the 50 million pronouns. Like, I think I'd rather just default to like they or their. Like, so if somebody wants to be ambiguous or is ambiguous or doesn't want he or she, I think I would just use like they or their. I don't know how many people that like seriously push for like Zer and Zim and whatnot, you know?
And so, with my understanding, anytime this all comes up and he talks about these constructs and everything, to me, what I've understood, that's what he's talking about.
Well,
and
I don't.
and I could, like I said, I could be wrong, but where I take what Peterson says and think, man, that is something that actually concerns me or that I can kind of agree with, is when I feel, or not feel, sorry, don't mean to say that word. What I have believed him to be talking about are those pronouns, forcing, compelling people to use those pronouns. And then when he talks about the radicals behind it, I think of those who are going out of their way to create as many social issues as possible. And then for those who commit any crimes against their progress, to ostracize them. There's no such thing as moderation. You're either with us, against us. Those kind of
like on one end, I want to believe that that's what he's saying. If he was, and I'd be more agreeable. But then like this is such a non-issue. Like how many people even push for like Zer and Zim? Like this is like super rare. Even in LGBT communities, this is like ultra super rare. Like,
and that's where it's like, outside of just the Zer Zim, I don't really know how often that's happening. It bothers me though that the government is getting involved in that. And that's
but the government's always been involved in protected classes. It's one of the things they regulate, so that you can't discriminate against employees or against tenants for certain classes that we've deemed worthy of protection.
Absolutely, and I think they should. And it's just a matter of to what extent is it going too far. And I know that's an ambiguous comment.
No, that's a fine comment. Like we can talk about like what's going too far. I don't think that preventing people from discriminating against trans people, though. I don't think we're anywhere near the too far thing. Conservatives
not
always
at
do
all.
this weird boogeyman of like what's going too far. But like I don't know if there's evidence of somebody going too far. I'd love to see it, but I don't think that keeping you from discriminating against trans people is.
Right. No, and I agree with that. I think that they should be protected, and obviously I think the anyone taking legislative steps to ensure that is a good sign.
But like I think for Peterson, didn't he didn't even want to address like students by their preferred pronouns, right? Like if they wanted to be a he or she or whatever, he would.
My understanding, it was just the Z's or Zim.
fuck, does anybody have a link? My understanding was that he didn't even want to do the he or she or whatever for trans people. But I could be wrong. I don't, or maybe I'm not remembering correctly. It's possible. But okay, sure, go ahead.
So anyway, just to really clarify my point,
Mhm.
I am not just a-okay, because I know that sounds stupid. I am in support of ensuring that transgender people are protected, that there aren't any abilities for the employers, whatever, to take unfair action against them. That society just as a whole needs to shut the fuck up and live and let live. And yeah, so that's I just want to make that clarification, because anytime I see a bunch of highlights of my name in chat, I get a little don't want to end up on fucking live stream fails. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one of the things. So when I hear things like that and I hear Peterson talk, I'm like, it's not just the Z's or Zim, it's the people that do go after that. And maybe if that's on the extreme, there are still the slightly lesser ones, where every perceived slight, where every attempts to make social turmoil when there has already been a lot of progress over the years, where there has been improvement in both the lives of minorities and these protected classes. I feel there is, danger is a very harsh word to use. I'm sure there's a better one, but I feel there is an issue. And we do see it if you look at social media interactions and the way that.
Yeah, so I would be really careful not to conflate stuff here. Like, social media is cancerous because of witch hunting shit, but that's not an SJW issue. Like, especially be careful of who you're talking to, right? Like, everybody fucking witch hunts on fucking social media. People on the right do it just as much, Like, we can pretend that SJWs do it, but like, people on the right did it to James Gunn. They did it to there was another great example too. But like, this has happened on the right as well. So like, and I agree, there are problems. There are huge problems with people that go like hugely witch hunting on social media. But I don't think it has to do with cultural Marxism or postmodernism or transgender people or LGBT stuff. I think that's just like a problem with social media and people having too much power and no accountability.
You don't think that it has to do with like I don't know if philosophy would be the right word, but the feelings and the beliefs behind the actors who
I think that it's a problem in and of itself, like that people can call people out on social media and destroy their lives, and they have a lot of power over companies that do it. I think that's a problem in and of itself, irregardless of like ideology, and that even if you were to delete like certain types of ideologies, these problems would still exist.
So that is my biggest concern overall. Like, and maybe that's my fault for conflating the two, but in my mind, knowing that both conservatives and liberals do the same thing, just that behavior in general, I feel is wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
And I feel though that the source of a lot of it does come from people, that tribalism, us versus them, and people on a certain side using social media as a method to enact their beliefs.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I disagree. I think that I think that anybody does it. I don't even think it's a both sides thing. I think it's just an everything thing. If you think you can witch hunt and destroy somebody's life on social media, I think people will just do it. That's it.
Yeah, and I think that
look at like the whole that thought report or whatever recently, where conservatives were trying to like hunt down like booby streamers that they claimed weren't paying taxes or some shit.
Oh my god. the one that reported it to the IRS?
Yeah. So I mean, like, this shit is like everybody just does. It's just bad social media behavior. I don't think that it's like the left or like certain types of mentalities that lead to it. I think it's just.
It was terrible, but it was fucking hilarious at the same time. Like if you take a moment to really empathize on a personal level and think, man, that is horrible, and I can't imagine going through that. Like, I've read accounts of these people who make a lot of money going through an IRS audit, and it's a terrifying thought. Holy shit. And then there's the part where you step back, and this is going to actually take me in like, oh, nice fucking shot. This is going to take me back in like two different ways. So there might be more to discuss, but one is the Louis C.K., right? Like, there are. I never say I was anywhere near professional, but I did amateur stand-up comedy. I studied the craft a lot for a bit. I was just very familiar with a lot of people's material, and I've had a very strict philosophy of you can't say what's funny. You can say what you personally don't like, but I never liked the idea of a heckler. I never liked the idea of a commentator coming out and saying, like when Tracy Morgan said, what was it? He made that comment about stabbing his son if he was gay, and that was years ago, right? What, 2010, 2011?
Not Tracy Morgan.
No, this isn't the recent one. This was the
Oh, was it different?
yeah,
I think it's a
Tracy
black
Morgan
guy.
did
Who the
this.
fuck am I? Oh, Kevin Hart. But you're saying a different person did this?
Yeah. So Tracy Morgan said he would stab his son, and then he had to apologize. And like, there's almost a part of me that's like, say, hey, I'm sorry if you were upset. It was a joke. But like, where these apologies get really deep, it's bothersome to me. But then he had, what's her name? The writer for 30 Rock. She's in a lot of movies. I can't remember what her name is. But she came out, and she was a big SNL star, and she said, she was also in 30 Rock, and she said, Tina Fey, she said, like, gay people sign his checks, gay people do this and that, and he should be more mindful of what he says. And I'm like, it's a joke. You don't have to like it. You don't have to like the phrasing, the format, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's a joke. So with the Louis C.K. thing, I had a big issue with, comedians go out there into these sets, and they show up at these places, and they do their set, and it's unpolished material. Like, they're just hacking it away. That joke might not have been in there, but let's say in that horrible format, because it was obviously something that was brand new, in that horrible format, when it was leaked, he didn't intend for a larger audience to get it. It really bothers me that people are also so up in arms. Like, in comparison to other material he made, like, that's Louis C.K. That's Louis C.K.
Yeah, I understand. Let's say that I made a movie, and the movie was all about the main character was a person that went through different schools, and he was trying to find like the best ways to like torture and then murder like kindergartners, and somebody made the movie. Do you think a fair criticism of the movie would be that it was like very offensive, if that was like the whole point of the movie?
Yeah, I guess offensive. I don't know. I've never liked the term offensive.
Sure. I guess like the thing is that like for some reason people seem to think that like there's this weird protection for comedians where like, well, it's comedy, therefore you can't say it's offensive, or you can't say that it's tasteless, or you can't. I mean, comedy, every art like exists within like a greater cultural context, and anything can be criticized. Like if I want to get up and do stand up, and my joke is to just say like the N word like 50 million times, and then someone's like, well, that's kind of offensive. You're like, dude, it's comedy. Like I don't think that's like a defense ever. You can simultaneously say like, yeah, it's it's humor, it's offensive, blah blah blah, and it's a joke, but like you can still say like, okay, well, it's still like offensive or tasteless or whatever. No.
Oh yeah, I agree. Give me 1 second. I gotta
go.
grab my charger.
Relocate to safe zone.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Don't die, buddy. Be safe. Sorry, I had to run downstairs, grab my shit, and get plugged in. Okay, so I completely agree with you. Like, I don't think that comedians are a protected class. I don't mean that in a joking way. I mean, like,
You don't think that what?
they're not above criticism.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's like the thing. It's just like people are like, hey, this joke is like kind of shit, or like this joke is like punching down or whatever.
Yeah, and I like, yeah, and I even heard other comedians saying like, yeah, he was punching down and whatnot. And like, I think my issue is that I saw a lot of commentary that was like I know you shouldn't read YouTube comments, but like a lot of Twitter, a lot of different things that you have a large group of people saying, I hate Twitter says articles, so I know that it's not a sample of everyone, right?
Yeah, sure.
But
Yeah,
there
it's
just
fine.
seemed to be a lot of unfair outrage about it. In
Yeah, and
comparison-
again, like I'm gonna be like really careful here, and I don't want to make this sound like a cop out. Every time you talk about like outrage culture and shit, I'm 100% going to agree with you. I think it's insanely fucking cancerous how insanely fucking outraged people get about everything. Like, I'm always going to agree with you there.
And so my thought there is though, is that a sign? Like the way people reacted to that, it feels like there is, when I talk about the spiral of silence, like there's just a lot of, there's just a suppressive aspect. Damn. There's a suppressive aspect to the way society is moving.
I shot this guy like 15 times.
Jesus Christ. Oh, that end. What the fuck? Did you drop a grenade after you killed him?
I think these grenades are like sticky grenades. I feel like I shot this guy like 15 times. Holy shit. Sorry, okay, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, so I feel like that the outrage culture is indicative of the way society's moving, and I have a concern. I try to not be like, I would love for someone to come in and say, Jared, feel this way because it's going to be okay. things are going to even out, etc. But I feel like every year it gets more and more systemic, the way that people are afraid to speak out, are against it, are afraid to offend. And I do believe it's shaping how we interact with each other, how we interact with as a society, how organizations interact with consumers. And I don't feel that it is a good direction, because I feel that it stifles a lot of thought, and it's very constricting. And it's one of those things where I feel that it's like a tax. Maybe a tax is the wrong thing, but it's like the government saying, hey, we're going to levy this against the people, or we're going to make this law. And once you get to that point, it's harder to roll it back than, if it had been killed, on the floor. Right.
Okay.
And so,
I understand what you're saying. And again, like I'll agree with you about the outrage culture stuff. Like, I think it's a little bit ridiculous how crazy people get about like trying to like destroy somebody that they disagree with. Hold on, let me listen to this real quick.
You have no idea about me.
You won't use my pronouns, so I'm pretty sure you're my enemy, yes.
Yeah, well, I know you think that, but I don't believe that using your pronouns is going to do you any good in the long run. I think it'll do quite the contrary.
What? Is that your medical opinion? Is that your medical opinion? Like, you are aware that non-binary people are valid in the American Psychological Association. Is that your opinion? Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
It's about non-binary pronouns.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
no, it's not.
I'm saying that that's what I'm about.
Were you there when I spoke?
Yeah, I've been here for this whole thing.
Okay, well, I don't know that. It's a genuine question. Look, I think that's what's happening is that we're pushing over a line we shouldn't cross. The newest legislation is requiring people to use.
But you are aware that that's being put in place so that we can't get fired. We need to be into the Canada human rights legislation, or we can get fired for our gender identity. Okay, then why'd you make a fucking video about it? I've been denied housing as a trans person. These rights would protect me. Denied housing? I've been denied housing. From the state or for the open market? So you've been denied housing, like, from the government? It's illegal either way if we had human rights. From the government? Or have you tried to get a house like everybody else, and they said, no, you're weird, you can't work. No, if the state, that's a problem. But if someone doesn't want to live with you, that's their right. They said, no, you're trans.
That's not true. That's not true. Well, I shouldn't speak about in Canada, but in the United States, it's not true that you can just deny housing for any reason. In the United States, is it the Fair
Housing Act?
Is it the Fair Housing Act? Yeah, you cannot discriminate against people for certain things. Like you can't discriminate against somebody for familial status. I don't remember if sexuality is included. Gender can't be discriminated against. Like technically on Craigslist, where's Apple is at? He can correct me if I'm wrong here. Like you actually aren't allowed to put ads that say things like, hey, looking for roommate, female only. Like technically.
Oh yeah, you're not.
Yeah, it's against the law.
Not.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it is the same in Canada. I thought it was the same in Canada, but I just to be careful. But yeah. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
So what you were saying that I know you agree with the outrage culture part, and I guess my concern overall with it though is like not just to say, hey, do you agree with me on this, but it's more. I mean, so what does that indicate for the way that we're heading? When people say, well, we couldn't make that movie nowadays, you couldn't make that joke nowadays, etc. That's a bothersome thing to me.
Well, in some ways it's bothersome, but in other ways it's good. We kind of have to like get into like a deeper philosophy thing here. Or not, I guess like maybe like life goals. Like here's one of the things that I look at. Something that's really fucking hard. This is so fucking hard to do is to break away from things that have been norms for so long. It is so fucking hard. If you would have talked to me 10 years ago and told me that like, you can't use faggot as an insult anymore, that's like inconceivable to me. Like I couldn't even imagine trying to make fun of people or trying to insult people without using that as an insult, because it was like literally like every other fucking word out of my mouth, right? If you played RTS, like it was the same for you as well, right? Like these things are very hard to break away from. But now, like 10 years later, right, like I pretty much never say it, or very, very, very rarely. That one time I got banned. It's very, very rare. But also, like I've even gone like a step farther where I don't call people like retarded or autistic or anything as well. And I've almost completely I've almost like completely gotten rid of this type of stuff as well, where if you pay attention to my stuff recently, it's very rare that I'll even make fun of people for like physical appearance. I'm trying really hard not to like lean into people for being fat, unless I'm like specifically talking like Greek or somebody, right? Or like general insults against the way that people look, or general insults against like, this person's retarded or autistic. I generally don't say these things anymore either. And now that I'm kind of like more comfortable with that, I don't think it's as big a deal. Like, like on one hand, it seems like, hey, like, man, in this current world, I can't call somebody like a retarded, aspy, dumb fuck or whatever. But then, like, on another hand, it's like, okay, that's true, but I don't know if I've necessarily lost much there, right? Because, I mean, like, at the end of the day, I had another word that I could insult people with. I've kind of lost that. But, I mean, I'm not really losing that much, Like, I don't feel like I've lost, like, some indispensable part of my life or something,
So I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to say the N-word all the time.
Because you played FPS, right?
No, actually, I just.
Oh, you
thought it
didn't.
was a
Oh,
good
you just said
word.
okay. Sure.
Like in like a non-racially
Yeah, let's not get
delete
into that. But I
word.
know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean, right?
Yeah. Sure.
And so I always argued intent matters more than the word, and I feel that it takes more intellectual honesty and maturity to discuss as a community, as a society, how a word should be taken than it does to just say nope, don't say it.
I mean, like, well, that's
The easy
kind
thing
of
is to
true.
say don't say it.
Yeah. Well, the problem is it gets really fucking hard. Hello?
I'm here.
Got a mic?
Oh God, I accidentally queued up a duo.
No.
What's up, buddy?
Hey.
Fuck it,
Oh,
I'll play
there's
this
so many
one.
matches where the person didn't have a mic.
Well, don't worry, I got one. So the problem is that it becomes almost impossible to separate out the initial intent of a word versus like how you currently intend it, or like the social connotations on a word. So like for instance, let's say that you lost every StarCraft match
This
you
is
ever
like
played.
my second time doing duos,
Oh my God.
so I'm not the best.
Don't worry, buddy. We're just gonna drop at the asylum and we're gonna kill everybody. It'll be lots of fun. Don't worry.
Asylum? Okay.
Yep. Get up. You can get up there. I believe in you. Let's say that you lost every StarCraft match you ever played, and let's say that also, like in real life, let's say that you were like a really small person. Let's say you're like 5'2" and you like can't even like lift your arms above your head because you're so weak, right? Let's say that in the StarCraft community, let's say that a new insult kind of developed for people that were kind of like losers and were very small and weak, and we call them Lycans,
You wanna go to school?
right?
No. Got it.
So like, even though over the course of like 10 years, maybe like people call people Lycans and they don't even know where the word came from, so it's kind of divorced from it. I mean, you would still feel kind of shitty, right? I mean, if you heard somebody referred to like as a Lycan or some shit, like that would still kind of make you feel like a little shitty, right? Yeah, and I think
I
like
play a lot of multiplayer, but I don't know if those skills translate into this.
this guy is just talking nonstop. I'm sorry. The problem is that like we run into the same issue with words like faggot, right? Where like even though we kind of we pretend that like a lot of these words, like that doesn't mean that you hate gay people. That has nothing to do with like being anti-gay or whatever. But the reality is that like for a long time, anything associated with being gay is literally like bad.
I think there's another.
So like that's
maybe
literally
another
the
duo
insult.
here.
Like the insult is
There's
that
like one.
you're gay. And that's
Oh,
kind
they're
of
out here
where
first.
initially the word got its kind of like edge from, and you kind of hear this even like in the way that people kind of like say it, because like they'll pair it along with calling you like weak or a sissy or whatever, which are all kind of ways that people used to make fun of gay people as well. So even if you don't mean the word in a homophobic way, it becomes like really hard to divorce that word from the initial kind of way that it originated. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Absolutely, and I think that's been part of the reason why I'm okay with dropping it from my vernacular, is that it's not necessary. And
Yeah, it's
there
kind
are
of like
better
the
words
whole.
to use.
It's kind of like the whole thing was like, well, why was it ever an insult in the first place? Well, because being gay is bad. LOL. Like that's literally
getting
like
outta here.
the joke to some
Right.
extent. Like you're gay. Lol. Like
Exactly.
that's bad. Period. And it's
And I think my quick defense before I decided to stop using these words, I think my quick defense was my desire to balk at the change is that I didn't like the way it was being forced. I felt that spiral of silence is the reason that it's happening, and I take umbrage with that kind of forced social change. And then just the idea that I'm like I'm not using it in a mean way. I don't mean it that way, and it took a lot to get over that.
yeah.
And I agree with that. The one that I'm still hung up on is retard, because we use idiot, we use moron, we use all these other medically definable terms to literally mean those medically definable reasons or conditions in a person who obviously doesn't suffer from that. So you say you're an idiot, you're a moron, like you're being mean. You can say it jokingly, or you can say it mean, like you are a fucking idiot. You mean that with the same intensity as saying you are retarded, right?
Sure.
But at the end of the day, retard is where is it because over time it evolved, and from this generation used this word, next one used moron, etc. And now we're on retard, but because we're in this age of social progress, retard is the one that people are like, nope, cannot say it. And then some will say, you realize you're arguing for the use of the word retard, right? And then they'll show you that letter from that kid who, you know, has Down syndrome and talking about how it makes him feel. And then you're like, well, man, I'm not inhuman. That really moves me emotionally.
I guess like the way that I kind of look at this is like when I'm insulting people now, I'm trying to not cast a net that's wider than what I want it to be. Like if I'm going to make fun of somebody, I want it to be like, I guess like I'm trying to pick things that I want you to be bad because of these particular things that I'm making fun of you. So if I'm making fun of somebody for being a Republican, it's because I think that being a Republican is bad. If I'm making fun of you for being a conservative or being a pro-Trump voter, for being like whatever, some shit like this, like I'm okay with those properties, with every single person that identifies with those properties as being insulted. But when we talk about things like retarded or autistic or whatever, like there might be somebody with Down syndrome that watches my stream or plays video games, or somebody with autism that, you know, is a fan or whatever, and it's like, wow, this like, what a fucking ass-beat dipshit, you know? And it's like, I feel like those kinds of people, like, it just kind of feels like kind of shitty, like, oh, like, I guess like, LOL, he's autistic. Well, like, I'm autistic too, but I don't think you hate me, right? Like, and it's just one of those things where it's like I'm casting, like, when I use a word like autistic or retarded in a derogatory manner, like I'm casting a really wide net, and I'm catching people in that net that I don't necessarily want to, because it's not technically like anything like horrible about being an Aspie or being a retard or a Downy or whatever, or Down syndrome. I shouldn't say a Downy, right? Like stuff like that, you know?
Absolutely, and that's why I don't say it now. I was like,
Sure,
I get that, and there's still that part of me that's like, but I don't mean it that way. But I think I also take an issue with illogical arguments about it, like the way you just articulated yourself and the idea behind it. Like who with that isn't going out of their way to be upset, who can listen to that and say, yeah, but you're just being a little bitch.
Yeah, no, and I understand the articulation is important too, like, because like, and this is why it took me so long to change too, is because people that would attack me over it, I would use your same defense, like, well, hold on, like, I don't intend to be homophobic. I'm not homophobic, and I don't hate gay people. I really don't. Ever since I was 16, 17, since I stopped being a conservative, I don't hate gay people. So like, how can you sit here and call me homophobic? And I found that like a really good change in language, especially when it comes to using certain types of insults, is rather than calling people homophobic or rather than saying they hate gays, it's rather more the idea that like, hey, when you do these types of things, whether you want to or not, you kind of spread homophobia. Like even if you're not homophobic yourself, like this is just kind of the effects of what happens. And I think that's like a more amenable, I think that's a real word, way of like presenting things, or agreeable maybe. Yeah, like, okay, sure, like, and I can get on board with that, where it's like, yeah, even if I'm not homophobic, by saying certain words or doing certain things, I can perpetuate homophobia, and now the ball's in my court. Like, do I think that my ability to insult somebody a certain way is worth me spreading homophobia, right? And that's kind of what I have to consider at that point, you know?
Yeah, it's like, there's nothing else to say to that. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, that makes perfect sense.
I mean, you can disagree with that. You can say like, well, no, I think that, you know, even if I spread homophobia, I don't care. I want to be able to insult. Like, and that's an argument you can use. But, I mean, I would disagree with that. Sure.
I still call myself conservative, even though I think that if I take a moment to really evaluate, I'm probably a liberal, if not at least a libertarian.
Sure.
Man, you know what's annoying? Is like years ago, libertarian was the thing to be, right? And
it was the edgy thing to be, but yeah, now
I didn't know. So where's the edginess come from? Like, maybe you can explain this to me, because to me, libertarians were very limited government. They didn't care if you were gay.
Libertarian was basically the position of like average middle class white kid who really hated the government but wants to be able to smoke weed. So they'd call themselves like a libertarian, right? Like, I don't really care about poor people that much, but I really want the government to fuck off when it comes to smoking weed. And that was like
I guess I never got that image of them, and because of that, when recently seeing people in the threads say make libertarian jokes, I was like, wait a second, I thought libertarians were like pretty neutral with everyone. But anyway, that's derailing. So all that talk leading me to this. I saw the Gillette ad, and I saw your podcast the other day about the Gillette ad. I think an issue I have is that no one can come in and have commentary about it without, and again, I hate Twitter says, but without people making those comments like, look at all the people in this thread, this is exactly why this ad is saying. If you have a problem with someone saying, hey, be decent men, obviously you're part of the problem. With a butter knife. I feel that that's dismissive, and just because there's criticism being levied doesn't mean that you can just label in
Yeah,
that
you
way.
should. You should be able to tackle the criticism head on. I agree. Yeah.
And so with the Gillette ad, your chat got triggered when I said this word, so I'm going to assume that you have a history with this word. I don't like generalizations,
Okay.
and I don't like the idea that that doesn't mean that and I heard this on the radio this example the other day. If I am in a room with 10 people and I'm like, all 7 of them are being pieces of shit, and I walk out and I say to someone, I don't like those assholes. Three people just got lumped in unfairly with the other 7, right? And that wasn't wrong. But if someone takes a quick minute and be like, all of them, like, no, just these 7 people were being dicks. Oh, okay, got it. And I don't.
What if of the 7 people, what if 7 of them were, what if 5 of them were being dicks, but the other 5 weren't saying anything about it, or they were kind of like implicitly approving it by being silent when the other people were dicks?
And I think that if all of them were doing it, there's 2 different arguments to be made. One, you 5, stop being pieces of shit. You 5, have some intestinal fortitude, and when you see someone being that way, do something about it. I don't think that they should then have to go out and write statements to show the world that they are distancing themselves from those other 5 individuals. I think they should be able to get a fair shake without having to do that. But I do think that people should speak up. Like, I was in chat the other day. I have not heard a lot of racism in CS:GO. I for about 2 months I played.
Hold on. Wish me luck, okay?
Good luck.
I'm going hard, guys. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I want to see what happens. Oh, nice. Got it. Anyway, so I played CS:GO for like 2 months, and I was playing it like 10 games a day, maybe more. And so what was the what were we talking about? Oh yeah, so I didn't really hear anything racist, and I actually had, like, when I first started getting into it, I had a lot of female players playing, and there weren't people being assholes to her. Like, there was 2 incidents though where guys were being racist, and
Okay.
there was a dude with a Mexican accent, and there was a dude from Korea or something like that. So both of the guys, I think, were like making mocking accents or just giving them shit and telling them to speak American, right?
Okay.
And it was wrong, and I spoke up and said, hey, don't fucking do that. But not everyone's going to do that, right? But the 2 points I'm getting at there is, someone should, it makes the world a better place when, I bet that guy felt a little better hearing someone, because the guy stopped after that.
Sure.
And I'm sure that might have made him feel a little better. Maybe it made him upset that someone had to stick up for him. I don't know, but I'm going to hope that it was a positive outcome. But the other is the fact that I'm not hearing it that much. Like, I saw Slasher make a tweet a couple months ago in the middle of me going through this, binge of playing, where he's talking about every game there's someone making, saying the N-word. And I'm like, I'm not hearing this. What the fuck sample size? Like, is the use of the N-word equivalent with higher ranked play? Because I'm not hearing this shit. And so it's like, I don't like the idea of it being trumped up.
Yeah, sure, I understand. And I'm sure that, like, the online comms have probably gotten better.
And so that,
yeah, go ahead.
And so with this ad, it's just the idea that I should be able to, as just a human being with cognitive ability, look at the ad and say, I feel it was pandering. I feel that it was poorly done. I feel that it does, in a negative way, make all men sound bad. And then someone to give a counterpoint, say, why do you feel that way? And I say, well, in this scene, they do X, Y, and Z, or just throughout the entire ad. They do this to generate an idea, which overall I can appreciate, but at the same time, it can be upsetting when you're not one of those guys, when a lot of guys aren't those guys.
I guess, like, I could be wrong, but I feel like if you're not one of those guys, isn't the ad kind of like being nice to you? Like, isn't it telling you to, like, lead by example and shit? And, like, shouldn't you see yourself as one of the people leading by example then?
That's an interesting way to think about it. I'm gonna have to rewatch the ad and see how I feel.
Because I mean,
that
that's kind of like
concept.
that's kind of one of the things it did, was like telling men to lead by example and whatnot. Do I have my brawler on, guys? I don't think I do. Fuck. Where'd that guy go? Oh my god, fuck.
It's gonna get you in the ass. Does Brawler just make your melee harder?
It makes it broken. Brawler.
Oh, is that how you one-shot that guy?
Yeah.
All right, hold on. Hey, Lycan, how come you don't complain about the culture of outrage when talking about the response to the Gillette ad? That's what we're talking about. Unless you're talking about the other side. Or wait, I don't know actually which side you're talking about. I'm talking about both sides right now. I'll kill him. Yes!
Who the fuck was just shooting at me up here?
Maybe the other house.
Holy shit, I'm so fucking confused. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are you not allowed to say both sides? Man, the things that get reactions from your chat.
Oh, both sides is usually used in a really dumb way, but I mean, you're okay so far.
Oh, you mean like that Trump meme from Charlotte? I assume?
Kind
I don't
of.
know.
Yeah, that's like one way of it.
Like, I just, there's insane reaction from both sides. There are people who are, overly offended by it, and then there are people who are being really stupid about those that are offended by it.
Sure.
And I think I take umbrage with both sides. I think
Okay,
that,
sure.
but that's my issue, is that I think there should be, I don't think that ad is without criticism.
No, there's definitely criticism that can be made, sure. But I mean, if you get like super upset in an ad, basically telling you to like, be a man and stand up and don't let other men get away with shitty things. I mean, like if you're getting like really upset about this, I would be kind of suspect, I guess.
I agree. And yes, chat, I am one of you. I don't mean it offensively. I just mean when I'm on the headphones, I become part of Steven. You guys are your own man. But,
Fuck this fucking game. Okay, sorry, keep going.
Damn, keep losing my train of thought.
Yeah, you were talking about Jordan Peterson. You said that you haven't seen anything too horrible from him. You don't think there's these fascists or communists that are like trying to take over everything, right? Like,
Yeah, and that's not how and that's also just not how I've interpreted his what he's said. Like, it's just that there is, though, like this. Did you hear about that hoax? The Peterson or Paul something, I can't remember his name. They wrote those fake papers about grievance studies,
and they got published in some journal or whatever, some shitty journal.
in a lot of journals. I think they wrote something like 25 papers, I think, or 100 papers. They wrote an absurd number of papers, and a bunch of them got published, and then a handful of them
we
were
talking to today,
whatever
Dad?
the step is before publishing.
I thought these were published in like a couple journals that were kind of shitty. These didn't like make like massive. I could be wrong, but
So I could be wrong too, but my understanding is they were published in several journals, and some of them were like the real bullshit SJW style journals.
yeah, they like made a, okay, sure.
And then some of them were in journals of moderate prestige. But if anyone in chat wants to correct, either way, I think that what I'm getting at with that and everything else that we've discussed is just I worry about a trend in social politics that is going to be that will be repressive in the long run for people who don't share a certain line of thought. And I hate Orwellian references, but I worry about that. Like there's going to be a time where it's like, well, you can't think like that, or you can't have that idea. Here's your life's ruined. You're going to jail.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the type of thought we're talking about. Like, if we're talking about people that are like super racist or super hateful, I don't know if I necessarily mind like socially ostracizing.
Fuck that. Yeah, right. But it's when it comes to an issue of people mislabeling that thought, where it isn't actually racist.
Yeah, and I guess like if I start to see like a lot of that, I would get worried. I mean, I get worried on the way that a lot of left people like kind of like label intentions of other people. That kind of worries me. But I don't see people like making steps to put these people in jail or anything. But I do agree that like tangentially related, like the outrage culture shit is like really fucking cancerous right now.
It is, and yeah, so that concerns me. And if I come up with any other ideas, that will pop in and drop them on you. But I think you helped clear up a lot of things for me. Good points.
Well, hey, I love you, buddy. Be careful, alright?
You too, man. Good luck tonight.
Yep, see you later.
Bye.